What is going on, everybody? My name is Baldassarre, and in this video, we're going to be looking at 7 amazing rock stars and the iconic watches that they wear on their wrist. So guys, without further ado, let's jump into it. In the world of rock and roll, there is constant drama, and often a power struggle that leads to a band breaking up. However, this first rock and roll icon extends from a band that certainly had its fair share of drama, but is one of the most iconic and longest active bands in the history of rock and roll, the Rolling Stones. And the center of this iconic group is none other than Mick Jagger. Mick has been wearing several different watches, however, he clearly is a fan of Heuer, 2 of them being his Heuer Octavia 11630P, and the Carrera, the 1153N. The Carrera 115N was produced from 1969 to 1974, and various dial and hand combinations as well as movements that included the caliber 11, the modified 11I, and the caliber 12. It came with a distinctive case, and the Heuer Octavia 11630P, also released in 1969, was made to really accommodate the larger case theme that we would see surface during the 1970s. Mick has been seen wearing his Heuers in many different scenarios, whether on the stage or in the recording studio. And honestly, I can't blame him for picking Heuer. Big fan of them. Now from one iconic British rock band to another. A band you may have heard of before, the Beatles. And for this one, we want to look at 2 of the members of the band, John Lennon and Paul McCartney. Both John Lennon and Paul McCartney are master songwriters, and arguably the greatest contributors to the Beatles' success. And both have been seen wearing Pateks. Paul is regularly wearing his Patek Philippe Aquanaut, reference 5167A. The Aquanaut was launched in 1997 and is really leading the charge alongside the Nautilus as 2 of the top sports watches Patek has ever created. Paul has been seen wearing this piece on Rolling Stone magazine in several concerts and also even wore it on his wedding day in 2011. Back in 1980, John was spotted wearing a Patek Philippe 2499 for his 40th birthday. And for those of you that are fans know that this was very close to his tragic death in 1980. This watch, though, is a beauty and is highly collectible. So much so that back in 2016 at a Philips Hong Kong watch auction, a rose gold Patek Philippe reference 2499 sold for $2.4 million. Imagine that. All right, I'll see myself out. Now from one of the most popular bands of all time to the king of rock and roll, Elvis. Elvis epitomized American rock and roll, so it's probably a perfect match that he wears a watch from a leading American watchmaking company, Hamilton. The watch Elvis would often be seen wearing is his Hamilton Ventura, a watch that debuted in 1957 and is known for its incredibly unique case. The king of rock and roll liked the Ventura so much that he wore it in his movie Blue Hawaii, and in fact, Elvis' affection for the watch is so well known that this watch is commonly known by many as the Elvis watch. A watch that Hamilton still sells today, and even has a line of the watch that gives a tip of the cap to the king of rock and roll, the Ventura Elvis 80. Back when I was a young kid, I recall sitting in the backseat of my dad's car, and often listening to a ton of different music, from different composers, bands, musicians, and when I think about all the bands and just artists that I would listen to, there were a select few that really resonated with me, even at a young age. And the one person we're going to be mentioning today is from a band that was incredibly special to me growing up, Led Zeppelin. In my opinion, I don't believe there is a band that can match the mix of songwriting, versatility, Billboard success, and overall talent than what Led Zeppelin was able to produce. And although many are familiar with John Bonham, Jimmy Page, and Robert Plant, the rocker that we're going to be looking at is reserved but equally talented, John Paul Jones. John Paul Jones was the keyboardist and bassist of the band and has been seen wearing one watch continuously over the last several decades, a 2-tone Rolex GMT Master. The Rolex GMT Master was first introduced in 1954 after Rolex was approached by Pan Am Airlines to create a watch that their pilots could wear that would allow them to track 2 different time zones during long flights. John Paul Jones sports his 2-tone GMT Master with a black dial often. It has been seen on his wrist since the 70s and appears to be a watch that he loves. In short, a great watch for one of the greatest and most underrated rockers of a generation. In the early to mid 1980s, rock and roll was in the middle of a transition. Following the disco craze and iconic bands from the 60s and 70s transitioning out of mainstream popularity, rock was looking for new bands that were going to lead them into the next decade. And in 1985, one of the key contributors to this new charge formed, Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses was one of the most commercially successful bands of an era, with their album Appetite for Destruction being the 4th best-selling album of the 80s. However, despite the band's success, there was never a shortage of controversy and drama. And despite Axl Rose being at the center of most of that drama, and him often sporting a Royal Oak offshore, I wanted to focus on the lead guitarist, Slash. During his time leading Guns N' Roses to Billboard success during the 80s and early 90s, as well as co-founding the supergroup Velvet Revolver, you would often see a similar timepiece on his wrist, a Breitling chronomat. The Breitling chronomat has been around for decades, and its early success led the way for another successful Breitling watch, the Navitimer. However, this fun and iconic watch is one of Breitling's most successful lines, and it's cool to see a rocker really give this watch some more love, because I do think it is one that is overlooked. Now for our last selection here, we have probably one of the most passionate watch collectors in pop culture, and one of the greatest guitarists of all time, Eric Clapton. If there ever was a constructed Mount Rushmore of the greatest guitarists ever, Clapton would surely have to be on it. He's the only 3-time inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, once as a solo artist and separately as a member of the Yardbirds and Cream. And to go along with his musical success, he's also an avid watch lover. So much so, to narrow down Eric Clapton to one watch is really not easy. He has an otherworldly collection. However, I want to highlight one of his former pieces that really was a noteworthy one and was up for auction a little while back, and that is his Patek 2499. This watch is one of the greatest watches ever produced by arguably the greatest watchmaking company in Patek. The reference 2499 was introduced in 1951 and remained in production until 1986. However, I put those words in production in quotes, since during this 35-year stretch, Patek only made 349 of them. Clapton managed to get his hands on one in the early 2000s from another private collector. And on November 12, 2012, he decided to put this iconic watch up for auction. And what did it sell for? Try $3.4 million. And when I was thinking about what watch to mention from Eric Clapton, although he owns many, I thought this very notable piece was probably the one that was worthy most of the mention. So guys, what do you think of this list? Do you have a favorite rocker from this list? And then also, do you have a favorite watch from this list? Love to hear comments down below about that. So guys, if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, also hit the bell icon, join the notification gang so you know when I release content. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, so that will allow you to see when the winner of the watch giveaway is announced, which leads to our next point. If you guys want to enter the watch giveaway to win a Timex Marlin, link is in the description down below. That is the Marlin Blackout version, so really awesome looking watch. And then finally, if you want to support this channel, helping to create a new generation of watch lovers, which is really my main goal with this channel, then please go ahead and check out our Patreon. We have some awesome perks there. Any support would be greatly appreciated. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.